right. So I'll just show you guys, if you've never seen me draw before, I always start off with a gesture drawing, so it's just a pencil. You can get one of these. This is a graphite stick pencil. It's kind of a thicker piece of lead. It's really nice because it's not super sharp and allows you to have a lot of freedom on the page. The lead's not going to dig into the paper, so it's very, very fluid, very quick. You get something like this. It's just a 0.5 mechanical pencil, and it's just a little sharper tip, and it's just not going to let you draw as fast. This is a 0.4. This is the secret to my career. 0.4 millimeter. All right. This used to be super hard to find. I would actually fly to Japan to buy these in the stores there. For some reason, the Japanese don't deem the Americans worthy of a 0.4 millimeter lead. We get the 0.1, we get the 0.3, the 0.5, the 0.7, the 0.9, but no 0.4. Bastards. Anyway, so the 0.4 millimeter is indispensable because the 0.3, if you use it, it will break. It's too thin. The 0.5 is a little too thick, so you can't do a lot of noodly detailed stuff. The 0.4 is just right. It's like the middle bear, whatever, that story. And so it gives you just the right amount of strength and right amount of crispness. But now, through the power of Amazon, you can buy this, or actually probably in Hawaii, there's a lot of stores. I found they're like little Tokyo stores in different cities. They usually carry the 0.4 millimeter pencil. Okay, so I'll just start with this and do just a kind of a quick gesture. And this is just going to be a headshot. I'll make it really easy. I'm just going to do a side profile. And it's all about just kind of figuring out where everything lies. So it's like if that's the eye, that's the nose. Can you see this?
Yeah.
All right, that's the chin, that's the ear. And look, I tend to be pretty technical about how I draw. A big fan of math and thinking about how math affects art and creativity. And so sometimes as I'm drawing, I'm actually thinking about just kind of the shapes, but I'm also thinking about the distances between this brow and the tip of the nose to this cut in the cowl, and how much distance this is versus this. I'm doing it all very, very quickly, so I'm not really calculating anything, but it's just like constantly checking distances and relationships between items, right? So you can sort of see it coming together, right? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I just need one person to be the designated person for the crowd. You, sir, right there, and then, no, your friend right there. All right, so if I look at you, you say yes, then I know everyone agrees, all right? So you gotta pay attention to everybody. If that's too much pressure, we can put the responsibility on that guy. You want me to move it to that guy? Yes, okay, you. All right, got it. All right. So, something like this, I'm going to make it more sketchy. So I'm not going to erase the pencils underneath. So I want that all to be there. So it's more of a mixed media kind of thing. And so now I pulled out the lead on the pencil a little bit, so it's a little longer. I'm going to hold it sideways like a piece of charcoal, and then I can go in and lay a bunch of consecutive lines down. Right, and that looks like rain. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You don't need to. I'm just going to ask him. So it's all good. Make this as easy as possible for you guys. Here it's very laid back. Almost got a ticket for jaywalking though. Okay. All right, and then I'm also kind of greeking in shadows and just sort of the side of the pencil. And this is kind of, any Bob Ross fans here? Bob Ross? Really? There's no way you could have seen Bob Ross. Right? Okay, anyway, so Bob Ross was an artist on PBS, and he would just kind of paint. He's very, very happy. He's like, oh, happy trees, happy clouds, and happy accidents and stuff. And so a lot of this I don't even need to look down. I'm just kind of putting down things, and sometimes those little shadows will mean something, and sometimes they won't, but I let serendipity and kind of chance affect that. You see, I just put that line right there, that's his eyebrow. You see it? Okay. And so I use the tip of the pencil to just kind of, I lift it up just very, very quickly, so it's a very subtle thing. And honestly, if you just do this over and over, eventually you'll get that dexterity to kind of be able to draw sideways like this, and then also kind of cut in and do a hard edge line, right? Okay? All right, so got a question, sir?
Yeah, I remember on a podcast with Kevin Smith, you said that Miller and Byrne was your go-to.
Yeah.
go to creators.
That's right.
Especially, it was pretty much your mantra when
Yeah.
you did your laps for like BU.
Yeah.
Besides them, what other creators like inspired you? Besides like the obvious like Kirby and Stan Lee.
Believe it or not, when I was a kid, I was not a big Jack Kirby fan.
Really?
Yeah, it looked very blockish to me, and I didn't really understand it because I was too young. So when I was a kid, I really loved Neil Adams, and I loved the fact that it looked like so real and three-dimensional. And in comparison, Jack Kirby just looked very more old school, and everything was squared away. But then when I got to my early adulthood years, like when I was like 20, 21, I started understanding what I was missing out. What I didn't understand is that behind that simplicity was this incredible power and dynamism. And I became this huge Jack Kirby fan. I went and bought a lot of the original art of his so I could see the originals at the full size he drew. And the guy was a master, and he was super prolific. And the stuff was so powerful. To me, he really created the visual vocabulary, which really defined the modern superhero look. And so a lot of what I do with my own style is try to capture that same level of energy and power, but also do the kind of pseudo-realistic thing that Neil Adams does. So there's a lot of that kind of fusion. But other artists I really loved were like Barry Windsor-Smith. There was a lot of cross-hatching. That all came from him. A lot of the very kind of the pose shots I do my characters in are very Mike Mignola, Art Adams-esque. But the whole Miller Burns story, this is something I did with Kevin Smith. He has a podcast where he just talks about Batman. You could Google it.
Fat Man on Batman.
Yeah, Fat Man on Batman. And we did it at his house, and he basically does it in his study. It's a very small room, and then he lights up. He's smoking constantly during the interview, so you get this weird. Anyway, so it was like really a weird, heady experience. And anyway, so I shared that story with him because I was always embarrassed to tell that story. I never had told anyone, but when I was a teenager trying to get into comic books, I was just so amped and so I wanted to get comics so badly, but there's no way to do it. There was no web comics. There was no internet. How do you share some of that frustration? And so how do you deal with that kind of energy? And so I would go to the track and run, and just to like burn off energy. And then to motivate myself, I would think of the people I was aspiring to emulate or catch or whatever. And so as John Byrne and Frank Miller were like the two big names at the time. They really were titans to me, and I just loved their work. And so I would literally chant in my head, Miller, Byrne, Miller, Byrne, Miller, Byrne. And yeah, so I don't know if that works or not, but you could try it and see what happens. Anyway.
Thanks.
I actually start with the brow right here. I'm not sure why. But I think it's because they basically set the stage for the eyes, and the eyes, the expression of the eyes are really the key to any drawing. If you want to have a character that looks happy or angry or put off, I mean, it's all that's going to come subtly through the position of the eyebrows and the eyes themselves. And so I always start there. That always kind of instantly kind of puts me into the world, sort of the mindset of who I'm drawing, and that's important. I think there's a little bit of acting or thought transference. You know, you're drawing Batman, but in a way you become Batman. And so, you know, if I'm drawing a fight scene, I find sometimes my teeth are clenching like this, and I make sound effects sometimes, and it's just like, and you know, it's almost like Tourette syndrome as I'm working. But I think it helps put you kind of into what you're doing emotionally, and that gets transferred into the drawing, and that's something that I think you guys recognize or see in a subconscious way when you're looking at the art itself. Yes?
Hi, Jim.
Hey.
So you said you started with Marvel in 87?
1987, that's right.
Would your first work have been Alpha Flight? Number 51?
Yeah, it was. Alpha Flight 51, right.
I thought so. I actually met you in Hilo in 1988
See?
in the Comic Center.
That's
it was
right.
6 of you. It was you, Mark, and you said, I can't draw anything, I'm just a writer. But you can talk to Jim.
Right. That sounds like Carl. Carl is actually a really good artist. When I started at Marvel, he was the guy that hired me into Marvel. And Carl's very, he's very knowledgeable, but he's not very fast.
Yeah.
And so he would probably take hours to draw you a sketch
Yeah,
or something like
exactly,
that. So that was part of it. And at the time, I think we did a bunch of free sketches, no? Or did you get anything?
I didn't get anything. But you did sign Punisher War Journal #1.
Right.
You, Scott Williams,
Nice.
and Carl Potts.
Do you still live out there?
No, I moved back in '99 back here.
Back here?
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, that's cool that after all these years, we've reconnected.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
All right, thanks. Good seeing you again. Next.
How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
All right. Actually, curious. I have a question for you. Obviously,
Yes.
that's this line.
So wait, 1 second. As I'm drawing, so you'll see that I'm just sketching, and then I just put this line here. In my head, I'm making little notations like, okay, that's off. And so when I go back in with black here, I'm gonna go in there a little bit. So I know that there are things that are off on the thing, like this probably needs to be a little higher. But I'm just basically making mental notes so that later I will go in with the brush and kind of fix them. This looks a little long here. But I'm just basically going in and laying down some simple values. These are kind of like light grays if I were doing a tonal drawing. Right, these would be the light grays. This would be more of a medium gray if I go to here. Right, that's a medium gray. Right, so that's the purpose of cross-hatching. It's just not to create lots of little lines on the page. It's actually to create values. Right, so a single crosshatch looks like a very light gray, and then a double crosshatch kind of gives you a middle gray, and then if you do a triple crosshatch, it gives you like a 75% black. Anyway, so your question? Sorry.
First
Or
off,
did I just answer your question?
You answered all my questions.
All right, okay.
First thing is, I wanted to say I'm excited about the Commandi thing that you guys are doing over DC.
The what?
The Commandi.
Oh, the Commandi, yes.
Yeah, that's gonna be pretty cool. But my question, actually, I want to ask you for a while, is that so you've pretty much done everything in comics. When all is said and done, what do you want your legacy to be? Like when people talk about you, like 100 years from now, like they'll talk about Jack and how he built the Marvel Universe. They talk about Stan and that. So what do you want people to think about you 100 years from now?
Gosh, you know, I used to have a funny answer to this, but
You did?
I can't think of one now. I just flew in last night, so maybe that's why it eludes me. But I'm pretty sure there's a funny answer to this. I just don't know what it is. I don't know. You know, I don't really think about that, but I do think about how I want my family to remember me, and I think that consumes my time more than not. Just because I draw a lot at night, and there's a lot of times when I'm going to conventions and I'm not with my family, and so I think about from their point of view and what I want them to remember, and hopefully that they would have really good, positive memories. I'm less concerned about my legacy per se, because I think at the end of the day, that's written by other people, and I'll be dead, so it won't really matter what they say. So yeah, you know, like you know, he was a good father. That would be really good. I've got like 9 kids, so I take it pretty seriously. After 9, you have to, and yeah, for some reason I'm more focused on that. So I haven't created a lot of characters. I created some like Gambit and Omega Red and Hush, but I've just always wanted to do really good work, and maybe something like that. Like, you know, didn't create a lot of shit, but tried hard and was a good dad. That would be like, you know, if I could just write that on my tombstone, that'd be awesome. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, it's good.
Hello, Mr. Lee. How are you?
Good.
Question for you would be, I know Batman's your Don't Stop Believing, but who would be your favorite character to draw and why?
You know, okay, so if you have 9 kids, you realize you have to love them all the same, right? And so that's like a lot of stuff. You have to kind of balance. Okay, I gave you $5 this week, so I got to make sure I give you $5 next week. And so we actually keep track of like what they all get when they graduate high school and college, and you I just want to keep it all like even. So I will tell you that as much as I love drawing Batman, I love drawing all the characters. And the more obscure, the better, because that means no one else has really drawn a good version of that character, so it makes it a lot easier. When you're working on Batman, you're competing with like Frank Miller, you're competing with Greg Capullo and all the greats that have worked on that. David Mazzucchelli, I mean, the guy's just the best. So to me, it's whatever you're working on, you gotta love that. You can't be working on a project going, I'm just doing this to buy my time and pay my bills because I really want to work on this other character. That's not fair to you guys. That's not fair to the publisher that's paying you. And ultimately, that's not a recipe for success, because that half-heartedness is going to show up in the work itself. So I'll tell you that whatever I work on, that's my absolute favorite thing to draw. And if it's not, then I shouldn't be doing it. So that's and I'll tell you that's important, because when I broke into the business, I worked at Marvel, and thankfully I worked on Alpha Flight 51. And actually had some characters I recognized. But the new universe was also happening at Marvel. A lot of like these no-name characters like Brand and DP7. Horrible name for a team. Anyway, and so all these weird-looking, all these weird characters. But if they put me on that book, I would have done my best to make that the very best comic I could possibly draw. So I think you have to have that mentality. So there's certainly characters I draw that you guys like, but it's not necessarily what I always respond to. There's things I've drawn, a lot of really bad Wolverines, but it's more like, if I drew a character and I like how it turned out, it doesn't matter what the character is, it's kind of what I had in my head when I sat down to draw it, and then I accomplish it by actually drawing it, and it's almost independent of the character itself. That's my long-winded answer to, I don't know. Sorry.
Thank you very much, sir.
Have you ever drawn blindly and it just came out really good?
Blindly? You mean so inebriated I couldn't see past my hand? Yeah, I've done that too. Yeah, I've done it. It turned out all right. No, so here's the thing. I could draw something underneath this table, with my hand. I've done that before at a convention, just to amuse myself. There's stuff you can do, because a lot of it is kind of internally memorized and stuff. But no, generally it's good to look at it. I could certainly. It's a mix of almost memorized things like muscle memory and cognitive analysis, right? It's like when you drive or skateboard or whatever you would do. If you're driving home, you're not cognizant of making left and right turns. You just know how to, go. You just go, and then all of a sudden you're home, and you don't really think about it. And that's a lot of what drawing is to me. It's like driving home in a really nice car. So it's I'm not aware exactly what I'm doing, but at the same time, I know I have to go and work on this ear. But when I get there, I'm not thinking in my head, all right, I'm gonna put 3 cross-hatched lines and then skip a little space and put another one like this. I just kind of do it, and so that's kind of where that muscle memory comes in. But I'll tell you, as I draw it, there are times when I'm even surprised by what turns out, and sometimes I go, oh, that didn't turn out so great. And then other times I go wow, that turned out pretty good. And then I'll even watch videos that people have shot of me drawing, and I'll go wow, that looks like magic. It's so weird, the lines are coming off the tip of the pen, and it's kind of fun to watch. It's wow, I wish I could do that. And so it's just a weird thing, the drawing process in itself. So a lot of it is directed, mentally directed, but a lot of it is subconscious and just kind of happens from having done it so many times. But certainly when I first started drawing, I would draw and erase, so many times. And every time I drew a new pose or a new angle, it was a lot of drawing, redrawing, and erasing. So that's how you kind of develop that muscle memory and that kind of repertoire of visual shots that you kind of need to do this professionally. Is that good? Does that work? All right, thanks, man.
Around the same time that the New 52 was being planned, maybe a little bit before that, there was talk of Max Landis doing a retelling of Death and Returns of Superman. Do you know about that?
I know Max, but what are you referring to specifically?
Oh, that he kind of like did a pitch of what's your take on the cutback on a lot of books from 22 pages to 20? Do you think it'll have to go back eventually, or do those 2 pages really hurt the narrative?
I don't think so. So I'm going to pull out this new tool I got just for this trip. It is a Pentel. I don't know. It's like a brush tip, and it allows you to. It has like a little ink cartridge inside that you put in there, and it's like a nylon fake nib, and it just allows you to put some blacks in pretty easily. My understanding is that Kim Jong-gi draws with this. Unfortunately, I can't draw like him, but it would be awesome if you could just buy the same tool and then like, woo, I could draw just as well. That would be awesome. Anyway, not the case. Yes.
Hello, Jim. Clark Kent, Daily Legal News.
Nice.
Perry White's been on my butt trying to figure the story out.
You're gonna sell this. All right.
He wanted me to figure out what's up with Superman. Why he stopped wearing his underwear on the outside.
You would know more than anyone. No?
What are you talking about?
This looks weird. This face looks abnormally long to me. Look, that was one of the things that we did in the New 52 is we wanted to kind of update some of the looks. We knew it was controversial, but you don't often see a lot of people walking around with different colored shorts on top of their pants. It was more the norm back in the 30s when Superman was created. Circus performers, that was kind of the look for wrestlers and circus performers, the strongmen in the circuses and stuff. So it made sense at the time. I think it was just a judgment call at the end of the day. Like, do you really lose a lot by making that change? I would argue that it's probably the least critical element of his costume, meaning you don't want to get rid of the cape, the red cape. You don't want to get rid of the shield, obviously. It seemed like the thing that, if you looked at the character from a distance, you probably wouldn't even notice that he's wearing red underpants if you were in shadow. So we made the change, and I think visually it looks cleaner, more contemporary. I know that people disagree, but that's the beauty of it. If you feel super strongly about it, you could get into the business and draw a story with Superman with his red trunks on and make it so compelling that everyone follows suit. So I always welcome people with a very strong point of view, because I think, if anything, the history of comics has shown that nothing is unchangeable, right? These characters are going to keep evolving and looking different, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was someone else that wore the bat cowl someday in the future, because these characters have been around for 75, 80 years. To say that they're frozen in time, that can only look the way they did at the time they were created, it probably does the characters a bit of disservice. And in fact, none of the characters look like they do when they were first created, Batman and Superman included. All right?
Thank you for the answer.
No problem.
Perry pays me.
Yes.
Okay, kind of goes back to another Batman question. So, Chris Daughtry said that he had actually contacted you, like back in early social media, during the MySpace days.
Yeah.
I heard from his side of the story, he was a huge fan of yours. I'm just wondering, what's on your point of view on that? What was your reaction to getting those messages from him when he was still on Idol? After he inspired him, but at the same time, it made him kind of stop. He realized he wasn't good before it.
No, he just says that. He just says that to downplay it. He's very good, and so he'll text me drawings or sketches he's working on in the middle of the night, and then I'll give him feedback. And I think it's just he doesn't draw a lot, and to get good at anything, you just gotta do it constantly, So, and any of you guys that are aspiring artists, really, you can't just draw on the weekend and then really expect to get better. You kind of have to do it almost every single day. When I was trying to break in, after I graduated from college, I moved back in with my parents, which they loved, and I basically set up a drawing table right next to my bed, and I would roll out of bed and start drawing. That was the first thing I did, and I would draw until my knuckles started aching, and I couldn't really draw anymore. But I did that for months on end, and then I realized after several months, the work started looking better. And it's a very subtle transformation, but something you have to do constantly to get better at.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jim Lee. Hopefully the jet lag isn't bothering you too much.
All right.
So the issue I have is that I draw a lot as a hobby. But the problem is, for instance, my wife has me to draw a horse for a class, and basically it should have been a 2-hour drawing at the most, but a 2-hour drawing turns into like an 8 or 9-hour drawing.
Sure.
So you being in the Neil Adams of our generation, what advice could you give me to actually know when to stop on a drawing? Just say that's good enough, just stop, and not just keep going for hours and hours.
I don't know. I have to see the drawing. Maybe it really did require 8 or 9 hours.
Well, you yourself, how do you know when you're just done with the work that you're on?
Usually when it's like 4 in the morning, I go, I'm done. It's pretty easy. There's a lot of that, I'm telling you. Deadline is super critical, but also just in terms of when you sit down and visualize what you're going to draw, you might have it fairly figured out in your mind, right? And a lot of times I'll think about like the level of complexity. You know, it's like those gymnastics moves. They have like a number attached to a move because it's difficult or not difficult. So I know there's certain covers that are more, or images that are more difficult than others to accomplish, right? So like an upshot or a one with a lot of figures and a very detailed background, that's going to take more time and be more detailed. But then you might just do a panel which has like a really large eye, and you know that's got to be pretty simple and direct, and so that's like a lower complexity in a way. So I have to kind of match up what the finished drawing is to the initial expectation of how difficult it was. So if you're drawing a horse that's galloping and it's leaping over us and we're like looking up at it, that would be very, very difficult. So 8 or 9 hours seems perfectly normal. But if you're drawing a horse in profile like this, okay, with no rendering, that should take you 30 minutes. You know, so it's hard to say exactly where you were in that spectrum of thing. All I can say is, when you draw a lot, you'll eventually come to a style where you kind of internally know when you're done with a drawing, and that's part of the definition of your style. So some styles can be very rendered, and some can be very simple, like an outline, kind of Charlie Brown type drawing. So once you establish your style, that's kind of, that will tell you when to hit the brakes and tell you to stop kind of overworking it, you know? But I mean, part of the fun of drawing is you don't know when it's going to be done, but when you get there, and you know you're there, and there's no greater feeling than realizing that you've gotten there. It's hard to explain.
No, that's very true. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
I had a question. I wanted to know how you felt about the racial diversity in comic books nowadays.
I think it's getting better, and it's going to continue to get better. It is a interesting question because I don't think it just stops at the printed page. You know, when you see a lot of these characters adapted and brought to the big screen, you'll see that, you know, Perry White, that other Superman guy, he was changed to Larry Fishburne, right? So I think it's important to have that. And so the argument I hear a lot from some fans is like, well, why did they do that? Why don't they just make all the new characters African American or Asian or whatever? Just keep the old characters, just keep them the way they were at the start. And I think it's important that to go back and retroactively rebalance the scale, because everything back then was all white. It was all focused in New York City, and it was because it was a reflection of the people that created the comic books. I mean, and there was no ill intent. It was no agenda. It's just the world that all entertainment was like that. But to not have any major characters sitting at the table that are of diverse ethnicity or gender, I think it just it doesn't make the world that was created reflective of the community and the readership that we have now. So I think it's an important rebalance, but it's a tricky one because it's always controversial. But at the end of the day, I think it's getting better, and we'll continue to get better. And if you look at the talent pool, and that's really where the change is going to happen, and the creators, the people that make the decisions of who to hire to work on books, as they become more diverse, you're just going to see more of that in the books themselves. And at the end of the day, a lot has changed in the past 5 years. So I think I'm very hopeful and optimistic that it will be even better 5-10 years from now. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mr. Lee, somebody once said if you don't ask, the answer's always no. So I'm going to take my shot and just ask, is there any way I may please have one of the sketches you're doing today?
I thought you were going to ask for a selfie, dude. I was like, yes, here. It probably stumped me. Is this a trivia question? Or
He
are you
wants to
good?
do a trivia competition for this.
Oh, for the contest?
Yeah.
No. Well, how many guys? No. There are a lot of people here that just like want it to be as fair as possible, right? Or do you want it to be a trivia question? See? No. Right? Most of these people are here because of the movies and the video games, right? No. All right. Well, maybe we should do a trivia contest. All right. X-Men.
Thanks, sir.
No. All right. Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hey, how's it going, Jim? Thanks for coming out and seeing us here. You've been amazing us with your art since 1987, and during that time period, you've worked for Marvel, Image, DC, and done a whole bunch of different comics and specific characters. And I was wondering, what is your favorite comic that you used to do that you don't get to do anymore, and what is your favorite character that you don't get to draw anymore?
There's a ton of characters. I would love to have a kind of an extended run on Wonder Woman at some point. Legion of Superheroes on the DC side. On the Marvel side, kind of like I liked a lot of the characters that didn't have a lot of powers, like Nick Fury and Black Widow. And that's kind of, Chris Claremont was just on this dais here. The first issue we did together. No, not the first. The first one, my regular run, I called him up and he's like, well, like, what do you want to do? I'm like, what do you mean what do I want to do? You're the writer. Don't you have this master plan? Like, don't you have like 5 years of X-Men continuity worked out? And this is what I was thinking. I didn't say it. I was very polite. And I got the sense that, no, it's just like, well, what do you want to draw? Tell me what you want to draw. That's what we'll do at 268. And I'm like, really? I like Captain America. I like Black Widow. He said, all right, cool. All right, I'll talk to you later. And he came up with that storyline with the flashbacks and the story of World War II. I might have told him I even like World War II because I do. And so, and I realize now, which I didn't realize then, is that if you're a professional and you're working this business, you want to have stuff planned out because you want to know where you're going. But at the same time, you want to keep it fairly open so that there's room for creativity and inspiration. Because there's nothing more soul deadening than saying, I am on issue 12 of my 110 issue magnum opus that tells the origin of this character, and you just feel like you are in the salt mines trying to get something done to get to this eventual story. You want to basically say, this is my book, these are the characters I like, I can go left, right, zigzag, I can, do a layup backwards or draw blindfolded. You want to keep it challenging creatively for yourself, and I think that's where I didn't realize that at the time because I was so new to the business. But I do now.
Thanks for mentioning that cover. I think that you do so much in your pantheon that we see all the time that cover always sticks out to me just because it's so unique to see your take on those characters, and you did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you.